no revelations, and one small action sequence and a lot of emotional sequences later, and you have one of the best episodes of Andor yet. Welcome to Voice of the Fat Mantis, and we are going to break this bad boy down. Andor episode 11. That's right, I said 11. Streaming shows don't ever go this high. It's totally insane. And we still have one more. This was the penultimate episode, and meaning that it's been going on too long. And once again, I have to say, normally I'm pro editing the episodes. There needs to be things going on to cut back on the long dialogue and the long scenes that sometimes don't pay off the way a series should. However, this, in my opinion, is a pristine episode. But we're going to do it character by character. First one, we're going to do Dedra Meero, who has almost no parts in this. Possibly just one or two lines. However, what's going on in her peripheral and all around her is very, very important. Before we get into it anymore, I want you to like, share, and subscribe. Voice of the Fat Mantis needs viewers like you. Moving on. So, Dedra Meero has the Krieger issue. There's Krieger, this guy Krieger. He's a smuggler, but he also works for the rebellion. He does all this work for people. He's been captured, but he's going over to Steelhouse. And they want Saw Gerrera to do a bombing run with his aerial ships to help Krieger attack some installation. All these things are happening, and the biggest mistake this series has ever done is never introduce us to the character of Krieger. And for the last 3 episodes, they've been going on and on about him. There's a whole plot about him and a twist in that plot, and we have never seen him. And today they show a hologram of a big, overweight dude, bald, looking weird. And I'm like, who is that? And they go, Krieger. And I go, Krieger? And I have never met Krieger. How hard would it have been to introduce us to Krieger? That was not excellent. The fact that they waste time on a lot of other things, but I would say that's my only real complaint from the episode. Now, this Krieger thing is causing all these problems. The Imperials know that him and his rebel forces are going to attack some group, and they want him to do this so they can apprehend all the other rebels who help him out. And Luthen has decided to let them die. Yeah, that's crazy. But moving on to is my man Cyril Karn, and he is back in the game. He's woken up to a late night call, or really, should I say, his nagging mother. I understand. I think a lot of us out here have mothers that we just wish we could strangle. But anyway, he's called to the phone. She wakes him up. He goes to the phone call, and it's that Irish sergeant who worked under him when he was Corsec security. And he basically points out that he's like, Andor's mother has passed away, and the funeral is going to be happening over the course of the next 2 days. You better get over here, or that's where Andor is going to be. Who's going to miss their mama's funeral? And he's like, I'm back in it. I can finally impress Dedra Meero, and maybe she'll date me. Later on, Cyril Karn does something so bizarre. It's not bizarre. I have a theory about this. But after his mother goes out for whatever she's doing, he goes into her room and steals credits from her. This kid is an incel. That's right. Star Wars has introduced us to one of the most interesting characters, and he's an incel. He lives at his mom's home. He has trouble holding down a job. He doesn't know how to talk to girls. He's probably never met a girl. Dedra Meero was probably the first of that. And he has to borrow or steal money from his mother. This is incel work, all just in a galaxy far, far away. And I'm loving it. That scene 2 episodes ago when he was showing that he was obsessed with Dedra Meero, it's so interesting that they put such a cringe-worthy character into Star Wars because you would never expect it. And so we're moving on to other characters such as Mon Mothma. Now, Mon Mothma has this riveting, it's not a monologue, but it's just a chat with her cousin, Blondie. It explains something she's been doing for the last, 6 episodes. That she's been trying to move money around and embezzle money and get all these funds and stuff. She explains it because she can't rectify all the clerical era in terms of money. And the Empire is sniffing around. They're going to find out. And she just can't get caught. And she can't tell Luthen because then he'll probably just kill her because that's the type of guy he is. And she's explaining that, and she says she's drowning, and she's, drowning underwater. And she's saying it to her cousin, and I realized this scene should have been 3 or 4 episodes ago. Whatever episode it was that we found out that Blondie was Mon Mothma's cousin, should have been when they introduced this idea to us, so that we understand why she might be willing to put her daughter into an arranged marriage. We don't really understand what she needs the money for. And so now that we saw this impassionate, very vulnerable monologue from her, we understand. And I just wish it had been earlier. I just think it was a little late in the game. And then another thing I got to say is, if any of you are confused about what her daughter was doing in the blue uniform, and they're hanging out with other teenage girls, and like Mon Mothma was upset about it, and she's like, it's the only thing she shows up on time for. She loves it and all these things. And what it is, she's learning the religion and the cultures of her Trenchillian ways. And those culture says that young women get arranged marriage. Her mother brought her to Coruscant just as an immigrant would come to America, and actually in hopes that her daughter would become sophisticated, new-aged, and adapt to the ways of the American, or should I say the Coruscanti. And instead, she has an interest in the olden ways. And that's really concerning her. It was an interesting tidbit to put into it and add a further level to Mon Mothma. The show is really good at levels. Now, of course, who gets lost in this show all the time? Andor. It's supposedly an Andor show, and yet he's often not the conversation that should be happening. And so he tries to get away, and 2 aliens kidnap him and his friends. But then when they find out that they be selling him back to the Empire, they're like, F the Empire. We'll give you a ride, and they decide to let him out. And so he actually manages to escape that hellhole of a planet because of the kindness of these 2 alien, I think they were poachers or something. And so he goes back to the planet that he originally had. He had originally had a humble apartment of. And first thing I got to say is we see 2 birds fighting over food out front. And they're clearly CGI birds. But if you're going to go to the trouble of CGIing birds in Star Wars, they better be alien birds. Those were not alien birds. Those were just normal birds. They look like a bird I could find in a jungle or something. I want to see a bird with tentacles in its mouth or something nutty like that. I don't know, man. So next comes into the scene where he goes back to his apartment, and what's strange is that he's opening up his treasure box, and you see the money that he'd stashed away before he went to prison, and we see his signature, very odd blaster. It's like old school. It's like a revolver, but it's a hand cannon. Love that thing. And then you see he's being very careful and quiet, and you look over and you see 2 aliens cuddling and fast asleep, and he doesn't want them to know that he's there. And I'm like, who are these people? What's going on? And so here's basically what I believe happened. I believe that he hid it like in the wall or something, or above, on the ceiling. And people have moved into his apartment since he's gone. So he had to break back into his own apartment and steal his own treasure out that they didn't know. But I just kind of wish the show had explained that, because I was a little confused as to, I'm like, are you having orgies with aliens, Andor? Is that what the show is reduced to? Because, I was like, did you have like a one-night stand with a couple of aliens? and just to steal? I don't know. I don't know what I'm... Andor, like, he's doing his thing. He's got his blaster, his money. He throws his boy, the only other survivor of this attack, escape that they're hoping. And there's this wonderful call to arms at the end of the episode. Now, a call to action typically starts at the start of a series or the start of a movie, and now it's happening now. Because this is really the story of how Andor wakes up to being a rebel. He doesn't realize he's a rebel, but he now is being woken up. And this beautiful call to arms where his friend is like, we have to tell people what's happening in those prisons. We have to tell them about slave labor. We have to, and it's very impassioned. And you can see Andor's like, yeah, I'm going to, instead of just being neutral and just being an outlaw, I'm going to actually do something for people. I'm going to make sure that no one else suffers the way we suffered. Powerful stuff. I'm into it. I loved it. And I was like, I love this show. I love this show. Except you need to edit. Learn to edit, guys. Come on. Just learn. Just please, come on. Saw Gerrera and Luthen. Anytime Saw Gerrera is in an episode of anything, he is the star of the show, and I freaking love it. I love the way the partisans are. And actually getting into that, when Luthen shows up to talk to him, and he's going to call him off. I thought he was not going to call him off of the Steelhouse mission, but he does. And so Luthen's not that bad a guy. So he goes to see his buddy Saw, and they pat him down, and they take him out, and he pulls out that stick I was talking about from episode 2 of Andor. And what I'm saying is he walks around with a stick, not pointed to the floor, but up top like this. And it's this weird handle thing that has a metal staff. And you're like, what was that thing that he was holding? And so I had surmised that maybe he's a member of the Church of the Fourth. Maybe like one of those monks similar to Jet Li's character in Rogue One. And I had another thought, because when they pull it out, it looks like a fancy salt shaker. Real fancy, like a real nice place, like you went to Italy or something. But I've had another thought, and I've had another one, and I think in my last episode review, I thought this possible. Is it possible that Luthen is an ex-Jedi? And that one side gives out a stick, but the other side has a lightsaber. Wouldn't it be interesting that in the finale or something like that, we're going to be able to see, similar to the Vader popping his lightsaber scene in Rogue One, that we're going to be able to see a blue lightsaber get popped from Luthen, and he just cuts some people up. I would love to see it. It really strikes truth, because in his incredibly well done monologue in the last episode, he was mainly upset that he used to be a moral good man, and that this rebellion has taken that from him. And like he said, he's like, I'm doing all these things, and then I look down, and I don't even see any floor underneath me, and I don't know where I am. And I'm like, this poor man. Wouldn't it be even more of a twist if he was so moral he was a Jedi? Something to think about. But anyway, he goes to see him, and once again, I love how they nonchalantly give him back his salt shaker. And we're like, what's in the salt, man? It's a lightsaber. Oh, yeah. Was that Kyber crystal that he gave Andor from his own saber? So he goes in there and he's having a very rough conversation with Saw Gerrera. Now, Saw Gerrera is a revolutionary. He fights for the people, and he's trying to explain to him what's going on, and that sets Saw off. Saw is like, you're going to let Krieger die. And so obviously the audience isn't emotionally connected to this, because we don't know who Krieger is. He's some pilot or something. And so he's just like, you're going to let him die? You think him and those 30 men are worth it? And he's like, I am. And they get into this weird, complicated thing, and Luthen just shows what a badass he is. Saw Gerrera's like, oh, you're trying to protect an ISB agent that's in your pocket. Who else do you have in your pocket? Do you have people spying everywhere? Do you have people spying on me? And Luthen is like, yeah. And he points to one of his men, one of his best men, in fact. And he's like, yeah, he's my spy. And Saw almost believes him, but then he draws out a weapon and he's just like, I'm just trying to get you to listen to me. And he convinces him that they need to let Krieger die. And Saw Gerrera seems like he's going along with it. Now, Saw might have been a hero and tried to save Krieger. And I'm wondering why this conversation had to go by. And the only reason why I could see it really being put in there is that Saw Gerrera is not going to let Krieger and his men die. He's going to actually try to go save them, which will make for complications. Now, an interesting thing is, I've talked about this before, Saw Gerrera is handicapped in Rogue One. He is deformed, he has some sort of lung injury, and he doesn't have legs. Apparently, he was cut in half at some point in his life. And so he has cybernetic legs, and he has an air tank, and he has a gas mask in later on in life. And so that's about 5 years away, as they say, from Rogue One. But now, if you look at him in this, he's wearing his same battle armor, but he is perfectly healthy. He's an able-bodied man, meaning we may be able to see what this injury is. And so my further summation is he's probably going to try to save Krieger, and that injury is going to happen here on screen, and we're going to be able to see how he got crippled. Fascinating stuff. Also, I wonder if this is a time where Jyn Erso is still rolling with him. Are they going to cast a young Jyn Erso for the finale, or maybe season 2? Who knows? And which comes to the final cool thing ever, and it's Luthen. Luthen with his slick moves. Luthen is leaving the area. He's trying to leave the planet, where he just talked to Saw Gerrera, and a phallic radar ship comes out. It's like, the back looks like a Star Destroyer, but the front is just a long, long tube with a radar dish on it. And I'm like, That's just gross. And of course, it's the Empire trying to mess with him, and they put him in a tractor beam. And what happens? He has his little transport ship is tricked out with all these weapons and all these cool things to escape the Empire, and he does these crazy moves. What types of moves? Jedi moves. He outpilots several TIE fighters. He actually damages the radar ship and the capital starship, and he gets away. And it was an amazing action sequence. But it even furthers my theory that he could be a Jedi. I feel like normal people don't pull this kind of stuff. I haven't seen Han Solo do this, let alone a normie. So who knows what's going on there. But ultimately, I love this episode, but the real question is, what did you think about it? Please let me know down in the comments. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to Voice of the Fat Mantis for more reviews, analysis, and all the nerd news that's fit to print. Till next time, ciao for now.